What I'm looking this for. Okay. Cyrus, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, I can. Very loud and clear.
Okay, thank you.
The theme is Psychology for Squash, and it's going to be done by Professor Jolly Roy. She is from the Center of Sports Sciences, Sri Ramachandran Institute of Higher Education and Research. Just a little background, Dr. Jolly Roy has been associated with, initially when I met her the first time, she was with Sports Authority of India, and that's nearly 20 years ago. And after that, she'd gone and she was based in Malaysia, heading the psychology part over there for all their sports people. And she has interacted with squash players as well. And now she's back again in India. So we are really happy to have her with us today. So, Dr. Jolly Roy, please take over.
Thank you, Cyrus, for your lovely introduction. And welcome to all the coaches. So today's topic is about psychology of squash. That's the broader topic. Of course, everything is for squash this time. But particularly, I'm talking about mental toughness. What is this thing called mental toughness? We keep hearing this word. I think from the time we have started with sports, we've been hearing this not mentally tough, very mentally tough, or something like that. But
Yes, sir.
honestly telling, mental toughness, an absolute definition in terms of psychology, we are still looking for it. But still, that doesn't mean we cannot say there are certain concepts which I would be presenting in this presentations. So I would just give you a brief of it and maybe give a small tip on how we can go about it. And finally, there'll be an interaction sessions. So you could hear it from the lab situations and I could hear it from your applied situations. So with this introduction, what is mental toughness? So as of now, we say that it is psychological edge that enables an athlete to cope better with than your opponents with many demands, like it could be competition, training, lifestyle, that sport places on a performer. So it's all about coping. But more importantly, it is about to be more consistent in your performance or in your training or whatever task you're doing. And to be better than the opponent in remaining determined, to remain focused, to remain confident, and most importantly, to be in control under pressure situations. That is what mental toughness is. I mean, this is not an absolute definition, but this is what an operational definition for this class would be. Now, when you talk about mental toughness, there are two things what you should know. It talks about belief, it talks about focus. Now, there are a lot of unanswered questions when we talk about mental toughness. It's like what separates athletes who thrive and who those who buckle under pressure. This is still unanswered totally. Why do some athletes succeed in the face of adversity? Why do some athletes experience unproductive thoughts while others don't? Why do some athletes bounce back quickly and others don't? We do have answers to some extent to these questions, but that is not an absolute answer. And it will take years before we can come out with a total answer. So these are just a few questions which coaches have asked me, and that's what I put it up over here. It's not necessarily only squash coaches. There are other coaches also who are involved in it. Now, I would just explain to you what is this mental toughness pyramid. If you see here on the right side, you see a pyramid. What they say in level 1, this is the foundation. That is the environmental influence. That's the basic part. If you don't have this motivational climate, they don't have the right climate for coaching, it's difficult to develop a mental toughness. Then comes the character of an athlete, which means it talks about personality, character, your independence, resilient, confidence, whatever you want, the characters required. That's you can compare it like an engine of the engine of any vehicle, which just pushes you further. Then comes, despite having external pressure, you the athletes develop tough attitudes, never say die attitude, go that extra mile. And that kind of attitude is what we say is the fuel which moves the vehicle. And finally, you have the tough thinking athlete at the top level, in even though you have external pressure, and that's where you get this performance, not just performance, but performance which is consistent over a period of time. So if you understood this, you will now understand. I will be talking about some components of mental toughness. This is just for your understanding, like in environment, tough characters, which leads to attitudes and which leads into the performance part. So that's how the impact works. Now, there's one question which many coaches ask me very often. Can we develop mental toughness? Yes and no. To some extent, it has got some personality factors which is innate, but there are other areas which you can, certain characters, when you participate in a competition or you become a sports person, there are attributes which you can develop. The psychological characters can be developed. So research says there is a personality disposition part, but there's also a trainable part. So mental toughness can be developed in athletes as a function of values, function of tough attitudes needed for modern day sports, your cognitions, that means your thoughts, what you evaluate when you see a situation, your emotions, your feelings, your moods, and your behaviors. So all these are which comes within this mental toughness, and it's not that we cannot develop it. Yes, we can over a period of time. Please don't expect any magic when we try to work with mental toughness. Another question which coaches ask me is, can we measure a mental toughness? Many people have come out with many questionnaires right from 1986, MT48 from 2002. Then it is sort of, you could see the development that's coming up. And right now we have a very simple questionnaire, which I will also show you here, which is developed in 2015 and published. And this is by Gucciardi. So there are, here they say it's separate components, but Gucciardi comes out saying that though we have components separate, altogether it is a unitary one one value. So in our institute here, if you bring your athletes, this is the questionnaire, the latest one that we would be using. And this is what I would be explaining to you the component, each component of it. But I would just show you the questionnaire. This is how the question. We just have 8 questions in it, and it measures your belief, your regulation, your emotions, your effort, your knowledge execution, consistency in adversity, knowledge skills, and positivity. So all the athlete would need to do is be sincere in saying, I believe in my abilities to achieve my goal. It's a 7 point scale. You just need to tell us on the scale of 7, this statement is 100% false according to related to him, or it is 100% true, or it is in between. So it just takes 5 to 10 minutes. And what we need, athlete, is to tell us an honest, quick answer which comes first into his mind. Not that you give us a very desirable answer. This is expected, possible. They will be faking a little bit. We cannot help it. But this is how it goes. But then when before we start this, we tell the athletes, please try to understand why we are doing this is for a proper baseline, so that from the baseline, if there are issues, we can help you to develop your mental toughness. So when we explain this to them, they are more honest and sincere. Now, you see here belief in ability, the 8 points what I've read: self regulation, emotion control, effort, overcoming adversity, decision making, positivity, all these which leads into mental toughness. Though these are all separately given, it works in tandem. Now let's look at each one of it. When I say belief in ability, there are 3 core points that you need to know. Ability to perform well. It doesn't mean ability to perform well means I'm looking at it from the winning point. Never try to focus and tell your athlete about only winning. That won't be. Even in a training, if they're doing something good from what they did yesterday, it's still a good performance. So that increases the belief. Ability to achieve a goal. Either you have given a goal or they have got a goal for themselves. Now, if that ability is there, he starts believing in his ability. Consistency in performance. It could be either a competitive performance, it can also be a training performance. So, these are the core issues. I'm not saying that you can't have any other abilities, but I'm just putting some of the things here, which is a very key point which you should, as coaches, focus on the athlete. So maybe if you are training junior level, you could have, if you have a sports room, you could have these kind of small posters put up: stay strong, believe, read have you got a goal. You can come out with all these things which indirectly works on their psyche. Now let's go to the second point, which is about regulation. We can teach athletes n number of skills, n number of strategies. You can take your athlete to the best psychologist in the world. But what is more important is the athlete should know how to regulate himself. It's just like how you have a fan regulator or an air conditioning regulator, increasing and decreasing according to the requirement of that particular game situation, which means when you say regulation, it is connected or linked to able to control himself. Very often, when your arousal level changes, athletes lose the control, and coaches come and tell me, till yesterday, he was doing this technique perfect. We don't know what happened to him today. He's all over the place, here, there, everywhere, and nowhere. So, this is why self regulation is a very important factor of mental toughness. So, that's linked with the control, controlling your thoughts. And when you control your thoughts, your arousals, your actions are all, and your behaviors are controlled. managing your thoughts. You see, every day the athlete, imagine a situation, comes to a particular court, he's training it. But the same court can look very different on a game day. Now that's what is I said manage my thoughts, because there is something what we call in technical terms cognitive appraisal. It simply means your thoughts, evaluating your thoughts. When you come to yesterday it was only a training ground. Today it is a competitive situation. You see opponents, you see the referees, you see the lights, the audience, and then the athlete starts thinking about the demand and the resource that he has. Now that puts him out of control sometimes. But if his regulation strategies are good, he will still be in control. The next thing is when you are having these two things in control, you will be able to manage mind, body, harmony. So you can be okay, little upset, frustrated, mad, meltdown. These are things what if you're working with small children, young athletes, not I'm not talking about high performance, you could use these kind of meters to I ask them, where are you? I'm just giving you certain ideas which you can do in a field situation just in case you don't have a psychologist around there. Now coming to the third point talks about emotion control. You understand when our thoughts changes, our emotion changes. When thoughts and emotion changes, our physiology changes. You can see athletes heartbeat increasing, breathing rate increasing. They are not able to sit in one place. They'll be frequenting the washroom. It just goes like that. So emotion control is equally important to be mentally tough. So some people can use their emotion to perform. While I was working in Malaysia, I worked with one athlete, very angry athlete he was. When we did a behavior coding, and after the game was and he won. After the game was over, I called him, and when I spoke to him and I asked him, "You seem to be very angry at every shot which you miss." And then he gave me an answer. Dr. Jolly, it is that anger that gets me to that level. So sometimes you can use emotions for performance, but sometimes if you are not mature enough or if you have not grown to that level, then you'll have to learn how to manage your emotions so that your physiology doesn't change. And when your physiology doesn't change, when your physiology changes, arousal changes. When arousal changes, you tend to forget what coach told you. The athlete tend to forget what coach told. There is digression from tactical skills, from technical skills. So this control of emotion equally important to be mentally tough. Now here again, if you are working with youngsters, you could just have a chart like this. When they come in the morning or when they come for your training, ask them just to tap. How do you feel today? Excited, tender, scared, angry, sad, happy. Please monitor this maybe for a week or 10 days. Young children may not express it very explicitly, but these things we have it in our lab. If you come to our center, we have something like this in our lab because we have the Sai Kalo India program. We are all youngsters. So we don't ask them, how do you feel? We just say, okay, tell us how. We just ask them to tap. And over a period of time, you can see what kind of emotions he or she is displaying when they come to your training. From there, you will be able to either pick this athlete, refer the case to a psychologist, or you can do a counseling in case there are issues. So this is a way where you can do a kind of teach them emotion control on this. So this is for people, coaches, if you are anybody training the youngsters. Now let's look at effort and striving. All of us know, of course, the effort and striving is very, very important. Now, what we need to know is how do we make the things happen? We all know there are certain goals which is given, but how do they make it happen? I don't know if any time you have tried this. But what you could do, a simple exercise on the field. I'm sure they all have their training diaries. After a day's work, maybe one line or two line, ask them to write. How did you make things happen today? So if you can monitor this, say it doesn't take much. What happens? Mechanically they come in the morning, they come in the evening, they just train and they go back. They're not using their mind. So now you as coaches can teach them that what is the extra effort or what striving did you do? What did you do to make things happen today? So it could be something what they would write there, or if something did not happen, also they can write it. You just go to, and they don't have to write 10 lines on this. Please understand, one or two lines, what comes into their mind first. If you can make this as a habit, I'm giving you some simple exercises which we do it over here. And I've also done it in some instance with high performance athletes, not with the squash, but with other team, and it's been very successful. And I was very surprised that some of the Olympic level athletes also could easily work up on this exercise. Very simple exercise. Now, once you have this, you can go to the next one, and because you would already have given the goal, so you could probably ask, okay, what would be the next goal? Can we push for it? What would you do for it? How would you work on it? When I was working with a netball team where the coach in Malaysia, where the coach was an Australian, even a day before the competition, I have seen her making the defenders, the attackers specifically write down and then paste it in the hotel room. And then we used to there used to be an exercise where she used to make them do it to come out with a final strategy to meet the team the next day. So same thing you could do. This is not a team game still. You may have a few athletes. You can come out with, okay, what will be your goal maybe for the next week or for tomorrow, whatever it is. What would you do to push to get that? So when they write it, you see, it is already ingrained in their mind. They already have a goal with or without their knowledge. And that becomes a practice which is inculcated. Because many coaches ask me how to increase that persistence in them. These are simple exercises that you can do to increase the persistence in these athletes. And finally, here you have to strive for success. Now, please understand, success doesn't mean I'm only talking about winning. When I say success, it only means success of the training goal that you're given. So, mostly if they are youngsters, the parents will always, or the society will always see success as win and loss. Please learn and tell your athletes that, or you could redefine the success as, okay, from this level, if your serving is better, or your lunch, or whatever it is good, you still are a very successful athlete. When you do this, you not only increase the effort in striving, you also instill a kind of confidence in these young athletes, particularly in the young athletes. It also works for high performance athletes. But most cases in high performance athletes, they already have their patterns which are set. So it works well for the junior level. So I hope you understood the three simple exercises that you can do at your level in the field. If you have access to psychologists, maybe they can help. If you don't have an access to the psychologist, then you can do it yourself in whatever level, because coach, obviously coach is the first psychologist. The So if you see here the picture, this small ant over here, you could see, it's just trying to push. So it's all about hard work. Maybe you could have some pictures like this pasted, or in your presentations, you could just show them. Look, you even if you consider yourself small, you could just do this. This is how you can connect them, and what do you call, link it with visual pictures, or even you can choose some of the videos which you could give for that. Next one is knowledge execution. Now this is the coach, and this is an athlete. The coach is like someone who's watering, a plant. So the plant, if it has to grow, the coach has to water. So the knowledge, what you give, technical, tactical, psychology, so social support, whatever you give, that's what is nurturing this athlete to grow. Then I understand what I need to do. That's the knowledge which this athlete has. He understands what is to be done. So some in this exercise, what you could do is you could probably ask, I have given you some instructions. This is your goal. Do you understand? And what did you understand? Because normally it is like an instruction is given and the athlete listens to it. They nod their head and go. But if you can ask them to replay what they understood, you will know that they would have probably missed out some key points in it. So please, if they you know you're giving instructions, you know you're giving a big knowledge to them, but make sure they understood the key issue that you are trying to tell them. I do things to achieve my goal. That's what the athlete feels. Sometimes if you take a rating on a 10-point scale, and if you say, do you try hard? Rate yourself on a 10-point scale and you rate that athlete. You will see the disparity in that. I persist in adversity. If you had this word, ask him to rate himself, self rating of athlete, and you rate yourself. And then you would see the disparity. If you are more or less close by, then you won't have issues. But if you are not, and the values are very different, and large gap is there, then you know it is time to call him separately, talk to him, and give him what you think, and ask, give him also a choice to tell you what is his viewpoint, because the two-way communication will work in this particular case. Have a deep understanding of what I should do. This is very often you will get it when high performance athletes are uh, when you're dealing with them. They just feel because they already have their set patterns. So sometimes it may work, sometimes it may not. But what is more important is how both of you, the athlete and the coach, are on equal page so that the execution of whatever knowledge you're given in an adverse situation, it's not in the calm situation, and in an adverse situation or under pressure, it works. That's what one thing about knowledge execution. So when you come to overcoming adversity, so when you look at overcoming adversity, you are able to consistently overcome the difficult situations. You see all these top athletes, they never became an athlete without consistency. You see you know like how long they've been on top. To reach on top is one, to stay there is quite another thing. So if you can be consistently able to overcome, this is one thing. This is more important for high performance athletes because it's all about the consistency what you need at the top. I enjoy performing even when things get tough. There are athletes at high performance who say, even if it's tough, I take it as a challenge. Or sometimes I even say, my worst is still better than the best of my opponent. So these are the kind of athletes who enjoy performing, who thrive in when they have challenges, and they get tougher and tougher. For them, overcoming adversity is not a problem. They take it as a challenge. From young age, if you can develop this quality, because in young age, what happens is they tend to compare with other athletes, whereas when you're in an older age, it doesn't happen that much. So then the ego comes into play. So tell them, what did you enjoy? Even in the losing, you have learned a lot of things, learning opportunities. Focus on those things so that athletes are trained and taught how to overcome this adversity, able to execute appropriate skill when challenged. Suddenly, there is a challenge. You expected, nowadays you have all biomechanics. and performance analysis people giving you videos of your opponent. So you expect, okay, this is how the person, your opponent, is going to play. But suddenly, a possibility that the opponent starts playing in a very different way, and that becomes a challenge. In that challenge, you should still be able to execute an appropriate skill, even if you're not mentally prepared. This is particularly important for athletes who are junior, still not at high performance, but not yet the beginners. The high performance athletes usually are able to still, about 30 to 40% of athletes, they are still able to you execute their appropriate skill, and they're able to overcome the adversity without much problem. Then comes decision making. Decision making, choosing the best alternative. Now we have a technique called visualization, which most of the coaches know. So it is during this time that you can prepare athletes with alternatives. What we do when we travel with the team, we show them certain clips of the athletes or the game of their opponent, and we ask them to write down the best possible alternative. It is done as an exercise, and I'm telling you this having traveled with the football national football team of Malaysia, the national netball team of Malaysia, where I was working previously, and I've seen the coaches from Australia, most of them working like this. Make them to do in written form. It is put in black and white. And from there, once that is done, so first what happens, they get the performance analysis person to play the video. He or she gives the correct analysis of how many serves, what is the area where they are serving, everything about the game. And then the coaches ask for the alternatives, and then they work out on the best alternatives, coaches and athletes. And then they pass this to the psychologist, asking us to do the imagery training. This is what is done at high performance. In other sports, I've not worked at this on this level with a squash player, but this is what was done with the other teams where I have worked. Now, how does it help? When you have alternatives which is worked out, it is like a hard disk of the brain, of a computer. You feed in, and when you need, you can just pull it out. So the alternatives are already worked. When you do an imagery training, alternatives are already worked out in the mind, which means under pressure, there is a quick, you don't use too much of mental energy. There's a quick thinking and a quick decision making which comes into you. So it doesn't happen like a magic. There is a lot of exercise that you might have to do here before you could get into the right appropriate uh, decision making. You could also use past experiences from the athlete. Most of the athletes who would have had some competitive experience, they would have learned a lot of things from their failures, from their success. So these past experience becomes very important in order to come out with the thinking and the decision making. So decision making in the game does not become very confusing. Finally, we have positivity. Positivity is hope in the present. Even when the going gets tough, we still need to keep the hope till the end. This is what every coach will be telling the athletes. Because if this happens, there is a productive thought that comes in. The athlete is able to control his physiological arousal. So you have your belief, optimism, positivity, attitude. You have your confidence in the situation. Your outlook is very different, and you have a growth mindset. And when you have this positivity, there is happiness in the moment. When I say in the moment, it could be, of course, you can't experience it that much when you are on a game, high performance, high pressure game. But definitely, at the end of the game, you still have happiness. This happiness increases the positivity, and in turn contributes into your mental toughness. So if you have a productive, how do you get into this productive thoughts? Let's look at it. I worked with an athlete who says, I will try to do this. If I ask, you could ask your athlete in such situation, give a situation and say, in this situation, what do you think you're going to do? If he or she says, I think I will try to do this or I will try to do that, then you say, it's not about trying. Please tell us your action. So usually I see our Indian athletes will always say, or Asian athletes would say, I would try to do that. I'll try to do this. It's not about trying. You should insist on the absolute action, which they may or may not do it in the game. That's a different thing. But that's how you train them on a productive thoughts. So with this, I will just show you. See, for example, now I've spoken to you about belief, regulation, control, effort, knowledge execution, overcoming the adversity part, how decision making takes place, positivity. And finally, all this together, we have a mental toughness index. So for our young athletes, what we do is we monitor it every 3 to 4 months. We monitor it. I've just given you two values over here of 2, 3 athletes. So you could see how we monitor. So we also know, for example, this athlete was not probably in our camp or he was away for some reason or maybe injured. So when they miss, we also know. So this is how we do a monitoring in our center in Chennai for the we don't have squash players, but we have shooters, we have weightlifters, and we have rowing under the Khelo India program of Sports Authority of India. So this is how we monitor. I've just taken out the names, but this monitoring becomes important for me. Like for instance, belief and ability from 7 to 6. Okay, we understand the first reading. We don't take it that much because we know that they might have given us a desirable value. That's why in a year we take 3, 4 reading to come out with a pattern. So we come out with a pattern so that we know exactly how, and when we know that they're coming out with big numbers, we also teach them to be more realistic in their assessment because they think for instance, our athletes here, if they are in Khelo India, they think they've already achieved something, which is not wrong. But Khelo India is the baseline for 2028 Olympics. So we start telling them these things, and then they start getting to understand why and we tell them it's not an exam. It is only to tell you, to teach you how to increase belief, how to increase your controls, how knowledge execution can be done. So we do have regularly, we have classes for them, not lectures, but to explain to them why we are monitoring them, what is mental toughness, what does it do, and different aspects. This is sorry. This is the value of one athlete. If you see this blue color, this is was done in the month of March. So when we give a value like this, we give in a descending order the first value. This is the so the coaches understand that this is the area which athlete needs to work. These are the two areas which athlete is strong. So from there, I given you another value in the month of May. We do different intervention strategies, and you can see these are the actual value of one of the athlete which is with us here in the center. You could see how the values have changed. Particularly, we worked on emotional control and positivity, where it was absolutely at home. So please understand, psychology is not just about talking to an athlete. There is a lot of mathematical precise calculations you have to do and monitor so that the athletes can be guided correctly to reach to the level whatever you are aspiring. So finally, the last slide is, what is the take home message from this mental toughness? Setting apart, mental toughness is setting apart from others, other opponents, other teammates, or whoever it is. Mindful of success, not win and loss, success at the task that you're doing at all times, in all situations. Only then you can say the athlete is mentally tough. So, with this, I would like to thank you for the kind attention. And Cyrus, if anybody, we have about 20 minutes left for question answers, which anybody would like to ask or
Yes.
they would like to share something.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jolly
Thank you,
Roy.
madam.
May I request all to post questions in the chat tab, and I will read them out. But
Yeah.
the key question I have, and I'm sure a lot of coaches want to really discuss this, is during training, before competition, and during competition. What are the key factors we as coaches should remember while we are talking to our athletes? So all the three
Uh,
different parts of it, I know it can go a long discussion, but if you could just give the key aspects, and a very important one is during competition, and more precise, in between games. We get 2 minutes break in between a game. So that's the key of, how should we talk to our players? What should we talk to our players?
okay. Well, I understand this part of it. What I've seen mostly is the athletes come out, you have that short break in between the while you're playing, and there are probably the corrections and the techniques given at that time, which is not wrong. Obviously, as a coach, you have to do that. But I think I don't think the technique or tactic is going wrong because he or she has forgotten it. That's happening mainly because the arousal level, the physiological changes because of the evaluations or thoughts of the demand and resource is going on in his mind. So maybe before you could give that situations, perhaps you'll have to just give him. I know you get a very fraction of a second, so you will not have much time, but even a few seconds if you can take to calm him down, when it comes from a coach, it makes a big difference. Calm him and then give him an instructions. That would be one. The second thing is, many times I've seen that athletes always think about opponent's strength and they totally forget to think about their own strength. So now we have started working on start thinking about what you have as a strong point rather than thinking about your opponent. Because when they start thinking about opponent, they are losing a lot of mental energy. As coach, I think probably this is one thing you should emphasize. Recently, when I was working in Delhi for the last 2 years, and I worked with shooting team, and some of the young shooters, they when I gave them this tip and the coaches, it worked well for them. I'm sure this will work well for squash also. So the basic thing, quick calming. You won't have time for all the relaxation, but just a couple of breathing and just calm. Give your instructions right. I don't think we should focus more on a mistake part from the psychology point rather on the strength so that his self-esteem is put up and focus on his strength. Tell him that that's a strong point where he can cover up. This is how it should work, but the timing is very short. But I think as coaches, you would know what key aspect for each individual athlete you could say. Did I answer your question?
I think that's covered a lot of the points. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Next question is if you could discuss something on goal setting. What are the key factors we have to look at during goal setting?
Okay. See, when you look at goal setting, you have to understand goal setting as a part of motivation also. It's a part of confidence also. So if you look any textbook, you will have all that smart goal, the realistic, specific, all that. But what you could do is simple exercise. You know that athlete A needs this thing to be improved upon. You could even do two ways. One, objective goal setting. Maybe you can say, okay, 10 serve, I would like you to do it like this. And you can have a value of consistently how many times the current level is. and then set the goal immediately according to that. Or if you don't want to do it objective, the style, the style with which he is performing, you could ask him to rate, or you could rate on a 10-point scale or 5-point scale, and then set a goal which is just immediate. So that will cover up your specific, measurable time bound, because some athletes could be injured. So there is no point if an injured athlete is there and you're giving a particular goal. So these principles of goal setting, you can keep it, but to be realistic, you need to go into very objective way of doing it. By doing that, you have a current level and you have a goal that you're given. Say after 15 days or 20 days, you can sit with your coach and say, no, you have not achieved your goal. So let retain the current level. So that is where we talk about goal flexibility. Now, how this will help is, it will help the athlete, it will keep him motivated, number one. Number two, it will increase his self-confidence gradually. So I think that's the way you can do goal setting. It has to be mathematically done, not just, you say, you can have a common goal saying, okay, do well. Do well means what? It can mean different to different athletes. So you have to specifically say, this is the area I need you to strike, or you have to choose from your situation. This is what I want, or divide your court into zones and give very specific, measurable goals. Then it will work.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got a few people asking me about the same question, which is how do you handle a player who is nervous just before his match or even once the match has started? What are the key things we as coaches could discuss with them or tell them just before the match?
Just before the match, it is natural that the breathing rate would be up, the heartbeat will be up. You would see athletes frequenting the washroom, as they said. These are very common, and it is not just for juniors, it happens even in the senior level. What I would suggest is that that's the time where you have very little time. Coaches don't get much time to prepare an athlete. If you can just teach them the simple breathing technique to bring down their emotional arousal level, they will be able to calm down and perform to the best. Now, calm down, when I say, it doesn't mean total calming like archery or golf or shooter. You need to know calming level till what would be the best for a squash, because squash is a game which needs some kind of mobilization, so the athlete shouldn't be totally calm. So breathing is the simplest way that you could do. Second thing what you could do is, we use one exercise called 10 seconds. So on a resting day, you can ask the athlete to show you 10 seconds on your stopwatch or on your phone. And on a resting day, you already have the value. Just before the competition, if you ask the athlete to, if he or she is giving you a value of 6, 7, it's a clear indication that he's already in a pre-start fever stage, and that's the time where you need a calming technique. If the athlete is showing you 11, 12, like that, he's already given up, and that's the time you need activation technique to be done. You probably need to give him a fast music or moving around, and those kind of things. So it works in two ways. So that's, I think, more than too many things. Of course, your pep talks will help, but your pep talks, I think, should be more about making him feel that he's the greatest athlete, however small or junior he is. In that situation, he's the greatest. So when you hear that your backhand is good, your strike is good, or your this is good, everybody likes to hear it, and that can mobilize some of your reserve energy. So these are the simple things you can do, because you don't have much time just before the competitions.
Okay, another question which is very relevant with our current situation. A lot of the players are home. Some of them happy being home, but a lot of the players really are very keen to get out. So mentally, they are not happy. So we as coaches today, what are the things we could talk to our players about? What should we tell them to be positive?
Okay. You see, we have never had this situation, and I think we have never taught our athletes to derive social support from the existing environment. Even we haven't taught because we never thought the coronavirus would come. So there are support which they can draw from their own environment, and probably this is something which we have to look in future, which means one is emotional support, uh, esteem support, tangible support. So these are and informational support. For instance, as a coach, you can give the necessary informations over a Skype or over a meeting like this, or even on a WhatsApp, and we can ask them to rate themselves and what did they do. This is one they do. Yes, they are depressed because they are they are there are some beyond control factors, like when the government order comes, it's a beyond our control, we cannot do it. So we have to give them the information support, saying this is something which is needed for our future. So when they understand that, it's good. We are in touch with our athletes, we call them sometimes, we ask them, are they going through some of the techniques which we have taught them. Like I do that for psychology, like breathing techniques, relaxation technique to our athletes, not on everyday basis. So something like that. So we have to teach them to derive social support from athletes, from our own environment, which can be emotional, informational, self-esteem, that is self-respect. You could do a lot of exercises with a wall and a bat in your house if there is enough space. You could do related exercises so they don't feel the lack of it. If they are already with some psychologists, they already must be knowing how to do a visualization, how to do imagery. They can work out all these strategies which are given or they can work it out on or as a mental exercise. So tangible support also. It is in giving, like maybe they share it with coaches. So I don't think it's always a top down that should be given. I think we have to train. We haven't trained any of most of them like this. That how you can independently derive a social support. Maybe that's what we have to look into future. Let's see how it works. This is what I would like to say.
Okay. All right. A question has just come in. Uh, what are the activities we can do with players aged 13 to 16 who constantly feels underconfident during matches and hence
Okay.
they underperform? How do you bring a change in their perception about their skills?
Okay, one of the thing with young athletes is they are having and indirect pressures. Direct pressure is from the opponent itself, but the indirect pressure is parents, if they're young athletes, because you particularly mentioned young athletes, parents, comparisons, their own ego, all these, peer pressure. There are a lot of things that comes in. So in my presentation, I did mention about redefining success. So if an athlete has achieved something, if as a coach's observations are very important. If you know that, yeah, she did not win, but she did this better in this game. If you could reinforce that to her, that will remain in her mind. It'll get ingrained in her mind, and that develops a kind of situational self-confidence in her, which helps her in formulating the different alternatives what I mentioned in my lecture. So that is why I said every if not every day, every week, if you spend about half an hour time on this psychological aspects of what did you learn, or what was the alternative, what could you do differently. Now there's another thing what we are still, I don't think we are doing it in India now, the reflective practices. What it's something like, oh, you did this, that was good, but what could you do differently? We haven't. I don't think we have started making our athletes think at least a junior level. If we can start at this level right from now, they get more bonding, they get more involved, and that's where uh, you can deal with this young athletes. Basically, please redefine the success part. Even a small activity, if they have gone from one level to the next level, even that is consider that as a success. And especially when it comes from a coach, it's very important for them. Okay.
Okay, I got one question. I'm not sure how to interpret it, but what are the points to read an opponent's mind and break his mind set up on court?
What are the?
Are there any points to read or any methods to read our opponent's mind? What's on our opponent's mind?
Okay, there are some body languages which, if this is a high performance athlete, you could read the body language of the athlete. But sometimes it can also be like they are faking it just to psych you out. So you have to be very, very careful about his body language to read what is on opponent's mind. So if you are trying to just read your opponent's mind, I don't know whether you would be losing a lot of your energy, mental energy doing that, and you may be right, but you can also go wrong. So I think it would be more important to look in within yourself on your strength rather than looking at and reading the opponent. I'm not saying it is wrong. Yes, of course you need to see where he's going to strike and all those things. But if you are familiar with that opponent, if you have enough videos, and if you're sure that that body language is not a fake, then it will work. So these are some of the things I think. As I think you need a little bit of competitive experience for this. I don't think a very junior level athlete would be able to do this very effectively. Does that
I
answer my your question?
Yes, I think so. I think we've covered more or less all the
Yes.
questions.
Okay.
So, is there any final parting tip to give us coaches that to make sure everyone's as confident as possible? That's the one thing, because see, a lot of times we don't have uh, psychologists with us. We don't have that luxury, and especially in juniors, when even our seniors, I think only a few may be having one. So our juniors don't have. So we have to double up as psychologists itself. So we whatever we say goes. So we have to be very careful as to what we tell our athletes.
I think one of the things you as coaches, this is a modern trend. I've seen some of the coaches when I worked abroad with some of the foreign coaches, they start focusing a lot on an athlete's strong points. Earlier, maybe 20, 30 years back, Cyrus, when we were going to Busan Asian Games, we were working on controlling the negatives and things like that. But now, the trend is slightly on work on your strength, work on what you have, compensate what you don't have. So we focus more on what you have, and I would request the coaches to work more on that, because then that develops their self-esteem, which also mobilizes the athletes uh, on their reserve energy, especially when they are under pressure. I think that should be the parting word. So
Sure.
if we
And
have to
for that,
train them.
I do have something which is linked. So if we could just spend maybe a minute, positive motivation and
Okay,
negative
sure.
motivation.
Please. Okay, negative motivation, yes, it can work if you are a person who can take challenge. Now, this works on your personality. Some people they can take it, and negative motivation can be instilled as a challenge, and they can come out. They can work very well on it. But there are athletes who can crumble down. So you have to be very, very careful we have a technique called stress inoculation. We start giving them little stress to make sure that the stress is no more stress. But it works differently for different people. So you have to be little careful when you do this negative motivation. If an athlete's personality is such that he takes it as a challenge, please you can go ahead with it. If not, work more on his positives, his strength. Wherever you can give him a little bit of worthy praises, which is actually a reward, not all the time, when it is really required, and when it comes from a coach, it works very well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any book
Thank you
on
very much.
sports psychology you would recommend?
What is it?
Any book on psychology?
Books will give you only theories. You have to have the theories apply a concept to the applied field. It works differently. You just need to know the theories. Yes, there are hundreds of books you could see in my in here. I don't know if you can see the number of books that I have in my department. So each book has volumes, emotions in sports. So maybe you could look at any book like Applied Sports Psychology by Gene Williams. Buy a few books over there, keep it. Some things you can read up, coaches can read up. So I would suggest that you buy you if you're taking something. Of course, you have your squash books, but purely on sports psychology, applied sports psychology books will be important because it is not the theory that you need. Yes, you need the theory to understand how it works in the field, but how you can link the concept to the field for coaches, that is more important.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cyrus. Thanks to all the participants.
Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I need to just
You on?
yeah, I'll release
Yeah.
it.
Good evening, madam. Hello.